Live television is meant to be unpredictable, but some moments have crossed into the truly disturbing. These broadcasts, raw and unfiltered, stunned millions in real time with their shocking revelations or terrifying interruptions. These are 5 of the most unsettling and haunting moments ever aired live on TV. On January 18, 1993, 33-year-old Maritza Martin, a Cuban-American woman, arrived at Our Lady Queen of Heaven Cemetery in North Lauderdale, Florida, to visit the grave of her teenage daughter. 2 months earlier, 15-year-old Yowandra had taken her own life after learning she was pregnant, a tragedy that devastated the family. On that January afternoon, Maritza's quiet visit took a tragic and public turn, unfolding in front of television cameras that had come to film a segment for a Spanish-language news program. At the cemetery that day, reporter Ingrid Cruz and her crew from Telemundo's Ocurrió were conducting an interview with Emilio Núñez, Maritza's 34-year-old ex-husband. Emilio, who had previously served years in a Cuban prison before emigrating, harbored deep resentment toward his former wife. He believed, without evidence, that Yowandra had been mistreated by her stepfather or killed by her mother, theories investigators dismissed. Despite being estranged from his daughter, Emilio placed the blame for her death squarely on Maritza. As Emilio stood by his daughter's grave with the cameras recording, Maritza unexpectedly drove into the cemetery. She remained inside her vehicle, silent, while Cruz tried to question her. The reporter persistently pressed for a response, even banging on her car window, but Maritza refused to engage. Meanwhile, Emilio left the graveside and walked toward his own vehicle. Moments later, Maritza stepped out of her car. She noted Emilio's license plate number, seemingly in preparation to report him, and began walking toward her daughter's grave. Cruz continued to confront her with questions, but Maritza remained quiet, focusing only on her path through the cemetery. Suddenly, Emilio reappeared, this time holding a 9mm semi-automatic pistol. As cameras continued to roll, he approached from behind and shot Maritza in the back of the head. When she collapsed to the ground, he fired repeatedly into her body. Witnesses reported hearing as many as 11 additional shots as the cameraman captured the horrifying scene. The horrible crime occurred only a few feet from the grave of the couple's daughter. Cruz screamed and fled toward her station's vehicle, while her cameraman scrambled for cover, still managing to record much of the attack. Emilio fled in a red Jeep Cherokee, sparking a manhunt. 2 days later, he was captured in Texas after stepping off a bus, and he was extradited to Broward County to face charges. At the time of her death, Maritza left behind an 18-month-old son. She was later buried beside her daughter, bringing a cruel and final link between the two tragedies. The crime shocked the community, not only because of its violence, but also because it was documented so graphically on film. The footage aired on news programs across the United States and internationally, later being included in documentaries such as Traces of Death and Bowling for Columbine. In court, Emilio pleaded innocent. His attorneys argued that his years of imprisonment in Cuba and alleged torture there affected his mental state. They attempted to reduce the charge by claiming the shooting was a crime of passion, provoked by the reporter's questioning. Prosecutors, however, presented the attack as deliberate and premeditated. In 2000, a jury found Emilio guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years, under Florida's sentencing guidelines at the time. The horrifying fate of Maritza Martin remains remembered as a chilling reminder of how grief, anger, and blame converged in a single violent moment, one that was filmed, broadcast, and etched permanently into the public record. In May 2008, Swedish twins Ursula and Sabina Eriksson shocked viewers during the recording of the BBC documentary Motorway Cops. The sisters, both 40 years old, had lived separate, seemingly ordinary lives before that point. Ursula in the United States and Sabina in County Cork, Ireland, with her partner and children. With no recorded history of severe mental illness or criminal behavior, they gave no warning of the turmoil that would erupt when they traveled together to England that spring. What began as a journey across the United Kingdom spiraled into chaos on one of the busiest motorways in the country, leaving behind disturbing images that remain etched into public memory. The twins' journey began on May 16, 2008, when Ursula traveled to Ireland to visit Sabina. Without explanation, the sisters left for Liverpool and boarded a coach bound for London. Their erratic behavior on the bus raised concerns. They clutched their bags tightly, refused a search by the driver, and were ultimately put off at Kiel services on the M6 motorway. Police were briefly called, but after a short interaction, the sisters were deemed harmless and left to their own devices. Soon after, they began walking along the central reservation of the motorway, attracting the attention of traffic officers and, coincidentally, a small film crew documenting motorway policing. What unfolded next stunned both police and viewers alike. Without warning, Ursula bolted into traffic and was struck by a lorry traveling at nearly 60 miles per hour. Within seconds, Sabina followed, colliding head-on with a Volkswagen Polo. Against all odds, both survived. Ursula suffered catastrophic leg injuries pinned by the wheels of the lorry, while Sabina was knocked unconscious but soon regained her feet. Their behavior following the impact was chilling. Ursula screamed that the officers were not real, while Sabina cried out about organ theft. Resisting aid, they fought off paramedics and police, displaying what witnesses later described as extraordinary strength. At one point, Sabina ran back into traffic again, striking a female officer before being restrained, handcuffed, and sedated. The shocking footage, broadcast widely, remains one of television's most unsettling depictions of apparent madness erupting in real time. Ursula was airlifted to the hospital, while Sabina was taken into custody in Stoke-on-Trent. In police hands, her behavior seemed calmer, though still unusual. She was charged with trespassing on the motorway and assaulting an officer, sentenced to 1 day in custody, and released on May 19th. What followed turned the already disturbing motorway incident into an even darker tragedy. Wandering the streets of Stoke-on-Trent, Sabina encountered 54-year-old Glenn Hollinshead, a self-employed welder, former RAF airman, and trained paramedic. Kind-hearted and concerned for her well-being, Hollinshead offered her a place to stay. His friend Peter Malloy noted Sabina's paranoia that evening as she peered from windows and snatched back cigarettes she had just offered, fearing they were poisoned. Despite these troubling signs, she remained at Hollinshead's house overnight. The next evening, as Hollinshead prepared a meal, the situation turned fatal. Without warning, Sabina stabbed him multiple times with a kitchen knife. Staggering outside, Hollinshead collapsed and died, his final words reportedly asking a neighbor to care for his dog. Meanwhile, Sabina fled armed with a hammer, striking herself in the head and assaulting a passing motorist with a roof tile before leaping from a 40-foot bridge onto a busy road. Miraculously, she survived, sustaining broken ankles and a fractured skull, and was taken to hospital. She was arrested on June 6th while still recovering from her injuries. The case drew international attention. Sabina was later charged with the deliberate killing of Hollinshead, but in court she pleaded guilty to manslaughter with diminished responsibility. Psychiatrists concluded that she and Ursula had suffered from folie à deux, or shared psychosis, a rare psychiatric condition in which delusional beliefs are transmitted between close individuals. As identical twins, their susceptibility was considered heightened. At her 2009 trial, the defense argued that Sabina had been the secondary sufferer, influenced by Ursula, the primary source of the delusional state. The court accepted her plea, acknowledging her mental illness had severely impaired her responsibility. She was sentenced to 5 years in prison. The aftermath left profound questions. Ursula, after recovering from her injuries, relocated quietly to the United States, while Sabina served her sentence and was released in 2011. For the family of Glenn Hollinshead, the punishment seemed devastatingly inadequate. His relatives questioned how Sabina could have been released back into the community just days after such erratic and violent motorway behavior, without proper psychiatric evaluation. They argued that had she been detained and assessed, the tragedy might have been prevented. The case of Ursula and Sabina Eriksson remains one of the most disturbing moments in live television history. The motorway footage, documenting sudden violence and bizarre delusions, and the subsequent killing of an innocent man who tried to help, still stands as a haunting reminder of the dangers posed when serious psychiatric conditions go unrecognized and untreated. One of the most unsettling and disturbing incidents live on television occurred in Bacabal, northeastern Brazil, in June 2025. Local reporter Lenildo Frazão, while covering the disappearance of a 13-year-old schoolgirl named Raíssa, inadvertently stumbled upon something so terrifying he would never forget. The harrowing moment shocked viewers, highlighting not only the perils of live reporting from disaster scenes, but also the devastating circumstances of a young life lost far too soon. Raíssa had last been seen swimming with friends in the Merim River, a popular but dangerous local spot. The river was known for its strong currents, unpredictable depth, and hidden holes along the riverbed that could quickly trap or overwhelm swimmers. When she failed to resurface, an urgent search began, with firefighters and divers combing the area for any sign of her. Within hours, concern deepened, and the story became the focus of local media. On June 30th, during a live report for his station, Lenildo entered the river to demonstrate both its depth and the hazards it posed. With cameras rolling, he carefully waded into the water, pointing out the risks of the uneven bottom and the strength of the current. The segment was intended to provide viewers with a clearer picture of the conditions that had made the search so difficult. But what followed would transform the broadcast into one of the most horrifying live moments in recent history. As the water reached chest level, Lenildo suddenly recoiled in visible shock. He told his crew he had felt something brush against him beneath the surface, describing it as possibly resembling an arm. Clearly shaken, he backed away quickly toward shallower water, glancing repeatedly at the area he had just crossed. His startled reaction, broadcast in real time, unsettled audiences who could see his fear and uncertainty. The broadcast captured every second of his distress, with viewers left to wonder what he had encountered beneath the river's murky surface. Shortly after the segment aired, firefighters and divers resumed their search with renewed focus on the spot where Lenildo had stood. Their efforts confirmed the worst fears. At the exact location where he had been reporting, they discovered the body of Raisa. She had drowned, and a post-mortem examination determined her death was accidental, with no signs of trauma. The confirmation of her death devastated the community. On the evening of June 30th, Raisa was laid to rest. Her school announced 3 days of mourning, suspending activities to allow classmates and teachers to grieve. A vigil was organized where neighbors, friends, and family gathered to honor her memory. Candles were lit, prayers were said, and tributes were offered, underscoring the deep loss felt across Bacabal. Lenildo's report, intended to raise awareness about the dangers of the Miarim River, had instead become part of the tragedy itself. His reactions, captured live, circulated widely, serving as a haunting reminder of the unpredictable nature of live television and the thin line journalists sometimes tread when reporting from sites of ongoing disasters. The incident left a lasting impact on both the community and viewers who witnessed it. For the people of Bacabal, the sudden loss of a young girl in such distressing circumstances underscored the hazards of the river and the fragility of life. For those who saw the footage, it became one of the most disturbing moments ever filmed and broadcast live, illustrating how journalism can, without warning, collide directly with tragedy. It was June 2014 when a missing child case that had gripped Detroit for nearly 2 weeks took a shocking turn. For 11 days, the family of 12-year-old Charlie Baduel V reported him missing, sparking an intensive search by local authorities and the FBI. His father, Charles Bethuel IV, appeared on HLN's Nancy Grace program to plead for answers, unaware that the next words he would hear would change everything. What began as a desperate public appeal soon became one of the most surreal revelations ever delivered live on air. Charlie had last been seen on June 14, 2014, at his Detroit home. According to his father, he had stepped away for a short break during an exercise routine but never returned. From that moment, a large-scale investigation began, with fears growing by the day. Authorities searched the neighborhood, the family's townhouse, and even used dogs to comb the area. But no sign of the boy emerged. His father and stepmother, Monique Dillard Bothwell, insisted they had no idea what had happened to him. As the days passed, investigators even acknowledged that they could not rule out homicide. On June 25th, while Charles was being interviewed on live television, host Nancy Grace abruptly interrupted the conversation with breaking news. She told him reports indicated that his son had been found in his own basement. The father's visible shock was undeniable, clutching his chest and gasping for breath as he struggled to respond. Moments later, the host clarified that the boy had been found alive. The revelation stunned viewers across the nation and quickly became one of the most unforgettable moments in broadcast history. Police confirmed that Charlie had been discovered crouched behind a makeshift barricade of boxes and a large plastic drum in the family's cluttered basement. Bedding and supplies were nearby, and investigators said he appeared to have been concealed in a space he could not have built alone. The boy told police he was hungry, though he seemed otherwise unharmed, and was quickly taken to the hospital for evaluation before being reunited with his biological mother. Behind the basement structure, officers also found a small tunnel that allowed access between apartments and to the outside, raising questions about whether he had been able to come and go. Allegations of mistreatment soon came to the forefront. Authorities stated that Charles had forced his son into punishing exercise routines and had beaten him with a PVC pipe. Reports also indicated blood was found in the boy's room. Charlie himself later alleged that Monique had helped conceal him in the basement and at times withheld food. She was arrested shortly afterward for an unrelated probation violation, while her attorney denied involvement in hiding the boy. Police emphasized that the seriousness of the situation meant charges regarding harming children were imminent. The public shock deepened as legal proceedings moved forward. In February 2015, Charles and Monique were arrested and charged with and second-degree harming of children, charges that carried the potential of life sentences. Ultimately, in January 2016, Charles accepted a plea deal, pleading guilty to fourth-degree child harming. He admitted to beating his son with a PVC pipe, was sentenced to 18 months of probation, required to attend anger management classes, and lost custody of Charlie, with no further contact permitted. Monique also reached a plea agreement, though her terms were not made public. The case, and especially the moment of discovery, remains infamous. A desperate missing child investigation, followed by an inconceivable live revelation, exposed allegations of dysfunction before a national audience. The haunting images of a father collapsing under the weight of sudden televised news endure as one of the most disturbing moments ever broadcast. On the night of November 22, 1987, Chicago television audiences experienced one of the most disturbing and bizarre moments ever captured on live broadcast. What began as an ordinary evening of sports highlights and scheduled programming turned into an unsettling spectacle that left viewers shocked and investigators puzzled. Two separate signal hijackings occurred within hours of each other, involving an intruder dressed as the fictional character Max Headroom. The broadcasts were chaotic, crude, and deeply unsettling, and the perpetrators have never been caught. The first incident took place at 9:14 p.m. during WGN-TV's 9 o'clock news. As sports anchor Dan Roan was delivering highlights, viewers' screens abruptly went black. Seconds later, an image appeared of a figure wearing a Max Headroom mask and sunglasses, swaying in front of a corrugated metal panel designed to mimic the character's distinctive digital background. The only sound was a loud, staticky buzz. The masked man twitched and moved erratically for nearly 30 seconds before WGN engineers managed to cut off the intrusion by switching frequencies at their transmitter atop the John Hancock Center. Confused viewers were returned to the news broadcast with the anchor briefly acknowledging the strange interruption. Roughly 2 hours later at 11:20 p.m., the intruder struck again. This time the target was PBS station WTTW during its broadcast of Doctor Who. Without engineers on duty at the Sears Tower transmitter, the interruption lasted far longer, running for approximately 90 seconds. Unlike the first incident, distorted speech could be heard. The masked figure made erratic cultural references, mocking WGN sportscaster Chuck Swirsky, mentioning Coca-Cola's Catch the Wave slogan, and humming the theme of the 1950s animated series Clutch Cargo. His gestures grew increasingly strange, including brandishing objects, moaning, and making crude remarks. The performance then turned more disturbing. The figure exposed himself partially, shouted nonsensical phrases, and staged bizarre acts with the help of an accomplice dressed as a maid. At one point, he bent over as the masked woman swatted him with a fly swatter while he screamed that they were coming to get him. The intrusion abruptly ended in static, and Doctor Who resumed as if nothing had happened. But for viewers at home, the surreal scene left a chilling impact. The methods behind the attack were highly sophisticated. Experts later confirmed that the hijacking required a powerful microwave transmitter aimed directly at the station's broadcast towers, effectively overpowering the original signal. The planning, equipment, and knowledge involved pointed to individuals with significant technical expertise. Despite the seriousness of the breach, no one has ever claimed responsibility, and the identities of the hijackers remain unknown. In the immediate aftermath, the Federal Communications Commission launched an investigation. Officials warned that the perpetrators, if caught, faced fines of up to $100,000 and as much as a year in prison. Yet despite efforts by the FCC, FBI, and local authorities, the case quickly went cold. Over the years, speculation has pointed to disgruntled employees or members of the underground hacking community, but no evidence has ever surfaced. The 5-year statute of limitations expired in 1992, meaning that even if the culprits were identified, they could no longer be prosecuted. The incident has since become infamous, remembered as one of the most disturbing signal intrusions in television history. Beyond its crude theatrics, it revealed the vulnerability of public broadcast systems at the time and demonstrated how fragile live television could be in the face of determined interference. The imagery of a masked figure invading viewers' living rooms with cryptic, unsettling antics left a lasting impression, echoing through popular culture for decades. To this day, the Max Headroom hijacking remains one of the most haunting reminders of how even the most familiar and trusted medium, television, can be abruptly transformed into something chaotic and disturbing.